I have been in love with this character, Eleven, since the very beginning of the show, and I did cosplay her a few times in the past, but it did fail because I was not very good at cosplay at that time, and I really became just a bit better when I started cosplaying Joker actually, and I was just really in love with the character, and I listened to I've watched all the seasons, and then I read somewhere that the season 4 was much darker, and I was like, okay, I think I'm gonna like it because I like a lot of dark stuff. But I never expected to relate that much more to Helen that I actually do. And it's this season that I've related to her the most. And I cosplayed Joker for a long time, and I still do, because it's one of my favorite characters of all time. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to cosplay him for a long time again. But he's not the only one I'm cosplaying. Eleven is a character that I want to cosplay since the very beginning, but doubting of myself, of how I could represent her, I wasn't sure really, you know. And now it just came naturally. I just had to. And as I already said before, in psychodrama, drama therapy and things like that, there's many symbols, metaphors, and a lot of times it's not exactly like what we went through, because it's a work of fiction. It will never be exactly the same as our lives. But I can tell you that as Joker, but more less directly, because obviously it's more fiction and science fiction and fantasy. But Eleven, what she has to go through, spoilers alert, do represent a lot my trauma. And when I talk about that trauma, it's really symbols. I've been talking a bit about it in some videos, and I've been dreaming since childhood about a huge house, and I've had issues talking about it just at the very moment, and I always have. And I started a few months ago to actually understand the meaning of that dream, but I had to go through Joker to explore more of my subconscious and thoughts and process all this to be able to understand it more. But I knew that the dream, or actually the nightmare, was just a way to tell me that there was something I had to work on, but I was just not ready, and I was just not understanding. And the nightmare, and actually I have to say I wasn't able to talk about it before, is a huge house. And in my dream, I know that it's the house where I live, but it doesn't look like any house I lived in. But it's huge, and it's very empty. It looks like a labyrinth. And there's some places darker in the room, in the house, and I just never understood why it was so empty, but also why so big. And in the very end of the house in the back, it's really hard for me to talk about that, but it's just a few months ago that I've really realized what it was, because it was all too blurry, the dream, and it's it's very dark, and there's a place in the back I cannot go in, because in my nightmare it's so haunted. The energy there is so bad. I tried opening once the door, and actually I cannot explain why, but in my dream I felt a pain that I never experienced in my whole life. Emotional pain I talk about. And I felt so much in shock. Maybe I actually did feel that pain, but I just don't remember it. But for me, so it's so it's so clear. For me, this represents my unconscious and all the traumas locked in there. And since I actually realized what it was, I dream less about it, but it's still there. But it's still there to a point that I just get fed up, because I'm tired of always being scared of going to bed, because I always have so much nightmares. I wake up and I have the feeling I'm gonna die. And when I start watching the season 4 of Stranger Things, I was in shock, because I realized at that point, which I never saw before, that the upside down is actually the same vibe. It doesn't look like it, but it's the same vibe as in my nightmares. And there's a house there in one of the episodes that really looks like the house I was talking about earlier. And one of the characters there really freaked the shit out of me in that season. And I know that it was one because the casting is super good, and for me it do look scary. But two, the context about it really reminds me of my mother. And it's less painful to go through him than Penny Fleck, because he looks less like her. But the symbols, what he does with his hands and things like that, really, I just told myself I really have to do something about it. And as a kid, my mother forced me to look like a boy. She wanted like to make me as she wanted me to look like, as she wanted me to be. And in a way, Hawkins' lab reminds me of how she brainwashed me, how she just made me her home. And I'm gonna stop there, okay, because it's already very hard for me to talk about it, and it's still to this day things I never was able to process, because I have no access to therapy. But because of stories, because of fiction, I just feel so, I'm so amazed by art, what art can make us do. This is so beautiful. I love it. And I'm just so happy that I found this. I'm just so happy. And I don't know what I would do without art. I'm so thankful for this TV show to happen, for Joker to happen, and for any kind of show or movie that helps any of you going through life, or just to enjoy life. You know, I talk a lot about traumas, but it's because a lot of times it's my way of expressing myself, but also because I'm always talking about this psychodrama and how I can help you and other people to go through it through art, not only cosplay, but stories, drawings, and writing, many things. And most of the time I don't cry when I watch Stranger Things. I do relate to 11, but I'm just so amazed by the story. But I would say like around the end of the season 4, especially the last episode, the episode 7 near the end. Oh my god. I'm shaking just to talk about it. I'm really when I really like a story, when I really relate to a story too, I get into it so much. Like sometimes I have to detach myself and tell myself, okay, wait, like chill out, chill, relax. This is not the actual life. This is just a story. But yeah, now I'm gonna show you a video that is really, 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 really connecting to what I was just talking about. So I'm sorry because I just realized it's 11 minutes, but oh, 11! 11 minutes! 11! Okay, that's it.